Good day, folks. This conversation continues of how the development of our Atamnirbhar defense system is actually one of a larger play in terms of geopolitics and how it can actually help develop our technology and our capacity and our defense complex in India. And the government has to play a huge role. But, there's talk and there's talk, right? So then you have this. Funds no bar will make Karwar Asia's largest naval base, says Rajnath. But then you've seen this, which I've kept cuttings off from the budget. Biggest gap between projections and allocation in defense budget. Biggest impact of reduced allocation will be felt by Navy this year. Does the union budget meet India's defense requirements, as written by Pranay Kotasthane? He says the key lesson from the budget is that the sudden increase in defense funding are unlikely in the post-pandemic recovery phase. Military planning for the future needs major doctrinal shift to counter the threat posed by China and Pakistan. Hopes of a quantum jump in defense expenditure should be laid to rest. Then you have this defense, the disjunct between words and action, that is C.A. Baskar. He says on current evidence, the bench strength of Team Modi is in the defense sector is wafer thin, and having 4 defense ministers in the first term is the case in point. But it is the fiscal constraint that remains daunting. On March 8th, Parliament was informed that in FY 2122, the capital budget for defense had been slashed by a whopping 76,553 crores. The Indian Forge remains caught between a rock and a hard place, and a PM will have to do a lot more than give. And this is one way to go with. Give half of defense land for sale proceeds to the forces, says Finance Ministry. And this has been doing the rounds, but the Babus love land. They love the corruption involved in the land. They're not going to let go, right? US eyes defense aid package in bid to cut India's Russian alliance will make Delhi one of largest such recipients. They acknowledge the requirement for S-400, though I personally don't. But when they're talking about this package and the US is talking about this package, we should be talking about leasing. While they're talking about this package, India goes and cuts its own feet. 3 billion Predator drone deal. India seeks clarity from US on price and tech transfer. Then something happened. I thought this was a done deal. But didn't happen because later I read out a week ago this was cancelled. Weaponized indigenization smartly, writes Pushan Das. He writes it rightly. But achieving this objective in a time-bound manner won't be possible without a defense partnership with like-minded partner countries and the private sector. He says, despite these reforms, though, defense manufacturing is plagued by barriers to entry. MOD often has no option, but MOD is the problem actually. For example, India lacks expertise and capability to produce several core subsystems on the indigenization list. So then why put them there, pray? The history suggests that while expansion of the positive indigenization list provides Indian companies notional advantage, the development and manufacturing of some of the listed items will need technology cooperation with international partners. But if MOD proceeds too quickly on indigenization, many foreign companies or OEMs will just not be there. The India-US relationship is well positioned to provide the defense technology sharing, capacity building and skill developments. That is exactly what we never got from Russia. And this is the important part. Tata is an important player. Tata acquires IP rights to develop military aircraft, made an attempt by an Indian private entity to develop a full military-grade aircraft in the country. And this also with the fact that Tata and Airbus have tied up to supply the aircraft to the Air Force, to the Navy, forces want Russian copters fast track. I don't know where it's going there, what's going on there. Negotiations almost over. 700 million fighter jet engine deal with US soon. In defense production, give private sector a chance. The private sector must be considered as much of a national asset and stakeholder in attainment of Atamnirbhar as the public sector, including foreign companies in India. And this is how did India manage to build an advanced jet like the Tejas? This is something written in the FP. They say, so far, India's defense industry is nearly as self-reliant as the government might like it to be, and the Tejas assembled by India's state-owned HAL in Bengaluru is a good example. The government estimates that the fighter is just 60% Indian by value, though the figure is expected to rise over time. The biggest ticket foreign components are the plane's GE F404 jet engine and Israel Aerospace Industries radar and electronic warfare system. Take these away components and all you have is an empty airframe, right? For India, that's not a problem. As a democratic country that honors contracts and respects intellectual property laws, it is able to buy advanced technology that it cannot produce itself. That gives the country a major advantage over its regional rivals China and Pakistan, which simply are not trusted by their suppliers. China's jet fighters development program have been repeatedly held back by Russia's unwillingness to supply high-performance engines for fear of Chinese reverse engineering. And key components of Pakistan's locally manufactured JF-17 are entirely sourced from China, as is the design. So huge trouble. India's blossoming military technology relationship with Western countries and companies go deeper than mere acquisitions, and this really is what needs to fructify. And with the US offering all the help, that's what we need. That's the wind behind the sails, folks. That's the way to go. You can't run before you learn how to walk. 3 cheers. So the other big area where technology can be developed for both use for both private and public sector, and it's also changing the nature of warfare, is drones. And this message came to us during this terror strike. If you remember, drone brings terror and a message: time to gear up. Military grade explosive used in drone attack. And this is also something that happened in the Middle East. US forces shoot down armed drone over American embassy in Baghdad. The Houthis have been using the drone against Saudi Arabia. The Armenia, Azerbaijan, the shape of the war was changed by Turkish drones. Same in the case, effectively being used in the theater in Ukraine. The medium is a message by Manoj Joshi. The Jammu attacks lesson is that in the era of hybrid war, civilian systems can be adapted for military use. And Vivek Wadhwa rightly wrote, the killer drones are here. Get ready. The next generation of drones have enormous destructive potential. India must not be complacent. Well, we said state support behind drone strikes, says top army officer, but how does that help, right? Either way, you need a defense, right? Auto, drone, PLIs, green light for new age tech. And that's, folks, is the way to go forward. This is the other area which is a force multiplier, can be used in the railways, can be used for agriculture, it can be used for delivery of medicines and all over the place. But spend the money in development for the armed forces, and there will be huge spin-off effects like everywhere else in the world. Cheers. When we talk about the Indian defense industry, Atamnirbhar, and you see an article like this, which is Railways sets the wheels in motion of war tenders to China company. Hong Kong banks deal for 39,000 wheels, apparently because these wheels now can't be sold for Ukraine and Russia. But the funny thing is, right, these are the same kind of wheels that are used in tanks. Like I said, nothing in the tanks, it seems, is produced in India. If this can't be done, where iron and steel is one of our, supposed to be our fortes, what next guys? But the other big force multiplier, because the funding available globally, is what Ambani says. India may emerge as a clean energy superpower. Indian companies, including RIL, have announced plans worth billions to boost green energy. But here what's critical is what I've written in my FB post is about the solar alliance and the state of this industry in the United States. Critical. Green partners. India must integrate with EU's renewable supply chain with access to its technology. That's the only way it's going to go. We'll boost clean energy ties with India. EU chief Modi seeks Danish investment for infra and green industries. Indo-German Green Hydrogen Task Force set up for climate action goals. India, Denmark, Inc. Green Pact take up Ukraine war. So here again, just Green Pact. US backs India's and UK's led solar green grid initiative at COP26. Solar grid. Modi invites German companies to invest in Indian youth. India, Germany, Inc. Pact for encrypted connection between foreign offices. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening as far as green energy needs to do that. And Europe is right there. That's why I say Europe to the center. By C. Rajamohan, PM Modi's European tour can build on new paradigm, beckoning India strong commercial and security partnerships in the region that stand on their own merit. He says there is no doubt that Western Europe has moved from the margins to the center of India's foreign and security policies. The crisis in Ukraine, which has shattered the regional order that emerged in 1991, intensifies the imperatives for deeper strategic cooperation between India and its European partners. After the Ukraine war, a new paradigm is beckoning India, a strong commercial security partnership with Europe, lots of technology. India's growing embrace of EU, Modi's three-nation tour in Europe will boost ties and set the stage for future cooperation. India's growing embrace of the EU in recent years reflects the growing importance of Europe in its foreign policy. And all three stops on Mr. Modi's three-day tour will facilitate an in-person assessment of collaboration aimed at post-COVID recovery and set stage for future cooperation. And here's where our sliding democratic credentials need to come up. G7, a strong message on democratic values. We've got to be there. Talks with 8 world leaders among 25 engagement in 3 days of PM tour. Germany plans to woo India with G7 invite, says report. Modi shows vow to deepen ties. European nations key companions in India's quest for peace, prosperity, says Modi. The second India-Nordic summit, a huge impetus to regional partnership. And that, folks, is critical. Europe becomes a source of massive influx of technology and funds in terms of technology for clean energy, especially solar. And when you tie France and you tie Germany, you tie now the United States, as I pointed out, and you become part of the supply chain, you've got to move this manufacturing out of China into India and give all the necessary incentives for that. A huge economic force multiplier. Cheers. So when India is spending big on green, like when you have this, in the first India plans standalone renewable battery power bank, government floats tender for 2,000 crore. We need to be in the game, whether it's batteries, whether it's cells, those specialized operations, right? Lithium is one thing, but to put it all together into cells and then into batteries is another game altogether. Chinese are the leaders. We need to get there. And the big one that's happening now, and the Quad is focusing on that, is semiconductors. The chips, not the potato variety, not the potato chips variety, but the semiconductor variety. As John Thorhill writes, the scramble for semiconductors is our era's industrial great game. Don't forget it. And government of India realizing this, chips down, government planned 76,000 crore SOPs to Leo companies, and it sure did shake up the world. TSMC beefs up chip production. That's critical. Now, TSMC should be part of our ecosystem, but for that you've got to improve your ties with Taiwan. In fact, lay down this as a condition that we're going to bring them out from the court if TSMC sets up a plant in India. Blueprint for Semicon Diplomacy, as written by Sagar Sharma, Urmi Tat. He says the current decade presents a unique opportunity to India. Companies are looking to diversify their supply chain and for alternatives to their bases in China. Placing semicon diplomacy at the heart of India's foreign policy is essential both strategically and economically. One of the ways of leveraging semicon diplomacy is increasing multilateral and bilateral cooperation, especially with Taiwan. Considering that global semiconductor market is projected to be 1.2 trillion by 2030, India needs to be well positioned to capture it. Otherwise, folks, it will be dead. India needs a 20-year semiconductor strategy as written by Pranay Kosthane and Arjun Gargeas. He says India needs to drop the dream of Swadeshi semiconductors. Instead, it should aim to become a key player in a trusted plurilateral semiconductor ecosystem that keeps key adversaries out. In our view, or at least 5 specific parts of the puzzle need to fall in place. First, India needs a 20-year semiconductor plan. Second, 20-year roadmap needs a 20-year financial support plan. Third, plurilateral strategic cooperation on semiconductors is a necessity for India, not a choice. The Quad Semiconductor Supply Chain Initiative is a good starting point. India needs to push for the Quad. Fourth, favorable trade policies are critical for building a plurilateral semiconductor ecosystem. Finally, the 20-year roadmap needs a robust infrastructure plan. Significant quantities of reliable water and electricity supplies are not negotiable requirement for fabs. It is not possible to meet these specialized requirements across the country. Hence, the Centre must work with a few interested state governments to build the necessary infrastructure over time. And I think Ladakh and Leh is one of them, folks. Just think it. Government to extend window for applications to chip scheme. India can be key ally in chip supply chain, says PM. Absolutely right. IT veterans, varsity chiefs on semicon plan. And just remember, under the Congress government, India did have a semiconductor PSU, folks. Just remember. Tata Electronics set for semicon packaging foray. At the same time as Tata is doing that, Intel to invest 7 billion in chip packing facility in Malaysia. Why is Malaysia ahead of us? Tata, tie up with Intel. You've tied up with Boeing, tie up with Intel. Bigger scope in chip assembly, testing in India than fabrication. This is Micron. Micron is another company controlled by Indians and has a huge investment footprint in Malaysia. Why not India? ISMC inks MOU to set up 3 billion chip plant in Karnataka. Why is it critical to make semiconductors in India? As written. At the moment, our semiconductor demand is fully met reports, and the consumption is projected to cross 110 billion, even higher than our current oil imports by 2030. Domestic production would greatly ease our trade deficit. It's critical, folks. Chips and cells. EVs, Tata's betting big. That is what we need to know, folks. When the chips are down, as Anil Nair writes, the new normal in supply chain includes geopolitical dynamics, climate change, and health safety. Chip off the new block. The drastic reduction in ship movement has also resulted in containers being stranded in ports and inland depots. Many countries are showing willingness to pay a premium for empty containers. The strife between China and Taiwan could well be looming global catastrophe, because it's also about who controls the semiconductor industry, which is disproportionately impacts global trade. The new normal in supply chain, the logistics now include geopolitical dynamics, climate change, and health safety. The world has to adapt fast, which arguably strengthens the case for Atamnirbhar, which includes being part of the global supply chain. And the other place where we are pushing forward is doing very well in handsets. Apple, Samsung may make handsets worth 5 billion in FY22. India takes on China, Vietnam in electronic manufacturing with SOPs, aims for 300 billion output by FY26. Other thing we're ahead of it is in space. India, France talks to address outer space challenges. HAL, L&T bags first commercial PSLV deal, the way forward. Cheers. So in order to become a player and use all these opportunities, whether it's semiconductors, whether it is defense, you really have to become part of the supply chain. And that will be the trustworthy partner. Besides the democracy, the trustworthy partner, which you have stability of policy. So when you have what happened with us here, we are a laughing stock globally, right? It started with Swaminathan Iyer writing, sell wheat, not war. If India acts quickly, the war in Ukraine could hand it an $8 billion bonanza, which it could have. India, and then when Prime Minister was all over the place, India has offered food grains to save world from hunger, says PM. Then it gets hot around the corner. Wheat stocks in India may fall to their lowest level since 1617. As private players step up, wheat buying, government eyes export curbs, and their banded export ban shakes world market. Wheat prices up 6%. Chaos in Kandla after ban 4,000 wheat trucks in Q4 ships half full. Pray, what the hell is this government up to? India relaxes wheat export ban, but global prices at 2-month high. US hopes India will rethink export curbs. Wholesale rate falls in Madhya Pradesh by 19%. Up in arms, Adani companies buys Kohinoor rice plant. Sometimes I think all our agriculture policies are driven by Adani. Abu Dhabi firm IHC completes 15,000 crore investment in Adani's companies. Barney, the blue-eyed boy, coolly kept this. But hey, we may be playing a part in this whole geopolitical drama that's going to end up the landscape that we develop globally. Who knows? Just like Reliance was, right? Pretty good. 3 cheers.